Today's episode is brought to you by Misplay. More about them and how you can earn gift cards by playing games later. Greetings, adventurers, and welcome to Skill Tree, where we learn how to do just about everything. Today, I'm going to teach you the ins and outs of leather, the different types, how to choose it, where to get it, and everything else you might need to know about the stuff. Now, we've done a lot of leather crafting on this channel, and every time I do a project, there's always a significant portion of the comment section that's asking me specifically about the leather itself. Mostly like, what leather do I choose, or how do I know what kind? Full disclosure, I had to look a lot of this stuff up actually. I've been using leather for a long time, but like one very specific kind. So without much further ado, let's learn together as we level up this skill. Okay, so there are a lot of things to learn about leather, but I actually think the most sensible place to start and where you're gonna see the most differences comes from the tannage of the leather. Tanning is just the process that's used to take it from like a hide and turn it into an actual leather. And I think the best place for us to start is veg tan, because it's what we tend to use on this channel. Now, as the name implies, veg tanned leather is tanned by vegetable matter, specifically like barks from trees and stuff. You can wet this stuff and then it'll allow you to tool in whatever design you want. While it's wet, you can also form it into something and then let it dry or go through a hardening process and it'll keep that shape. And this stuff is great, again, for a lot of the things we use on this show, like armor, right? Because it is more stiff and it does take shapes really well. Finally, it takes dye really well, so you can make it whatever color you want. And this has been like my wheelhouse so far, because you can do all those different things to it, and because of like the stuff I tend to make, like bracers and armor or whatever, veg tan just ends up being the natural fit for me. But moving on from veg tan, we've got chrome tan. Ooh. And you can already really see the main difference in the two, right? Veg tan, chrome tan. Chrome tan is very much like a fabric almost. It's super supple and cloth-like. That's because, as the name suggests, it's actually tanned in chromium salts. That ends up making it a lot more soft and flexible, but it does come with some limitations. Being that you can't tool it, it won't hold a design if you were to try to tool it into it. And it also doesn't hold a shape, right? Because it is so cloth-like, you can't like wet form it into position and have it stay put. Also, it's gonna come whatever color you bought it in, and it does come in a riot of colors actually. So if you're looking for a very specific, very pure color, odds are you're gonna be able to find it really well in a chrome tan. But you can't dye it. It does not take a dye really well. So you choose whatever color you want, and just like a fabric kind of, that's what it's going. Well, not like a fabric, you can dye a fabric better. Still, you get what I'm saying. You get the color you want, and that's what you use. Now, where these come in handy is like for a piece of garment wear, right? It drapes like a fabric. It wears kind of like a fabric. Most of the things you see in the fashion industry that have leather will have like a chrome tan leather. Also things like upholstery, this works really well for. It's not better or worse than veg tan leather, it's just different, and you use it for different applications. All right, so next up, we actually have what's usually referred to as oil tanned, I think, which is actually kind of a misnomer from what I've read. It is chrome tan leather that's then like injected with a whole bunch of oil. And that does a few things. One, it brings out the leather's natural imperfections and makes them look really kind of rugged and cool. Like, look at that. That has a lot of personality, right? It also makes them a little bit more rugged, makes them wear a lot better so you can use them outside, helps make them waterproof. But again, it suffers a lot of the same things that chrome tan, because it is chrome tan just with oil in it, where you can't dye it, it doesn't hold the shape very well. But if you're making some sort of an outdoor garment, this stuff will work out perfectly. Okay, there is a few more to mention that I actually don't have pieces of, but luckily my local Tandy Leather let me walk around and take some footage of things so you can see what it looks like. Special thank you to them, by the way. You're gonna be seeing a lot of Tandy stuff featured in this episode. I promise this isn't like a sponsorship. It's just the place that I can go to and what I've been using for all these years, so I trust them. But yeah, the other tannages that I've read about are alum tan, I believe it's called, and brain tan. So alum tanning uses aluminum salts in the tanning process. The leather this one creates is very like flexible and light. It's perfect for gloves, right? Not necessarily like work gloves, but like fancy going out gloves, let's say. It's not as resistant to wear as the ones we've talked about so far, so you definitely want it for like kind of low traffic things. And then the brain tan, that's actually the most traditional way of doing it. You're actually using the brain of the animal to tan the leather. I've not experienced this leather before, but my understanding is it makes a really soft, pliable, and washable leather. And you'll often see people who like either reenactments or traditional methods of making things using this method to make their leather. Oh yeah, there's one more too, which is actually like not tanned leather. So a hide that is left raw and just preserved is a rawhide. This is this kind of really hard stuff you see here. It's often used for like dog toys, you know, you'll get a rawhide bone or something. And it's kind of cool, you can wet it and it becomes soft and pliable, but then you can shape it to whatever you want or you stretch it, and then when it dries, it becomes tighter and tighter and gets really hard. Which again is why it makes a great drum head, right? You kind of stretch it over the drum, and then as it dries, it gets even more kind of tight. It's also good to use for like lacing. If you get rawhide lacing, you can lace something up, again, while it was wet, and then as it dries, those lacing pull even tighter. I think that's it for tannages. Next, we'll go into the leather cuts. And this is kind of interesting. So you see this kind of graphic here I've stolen from Tandy Leather. This shows all the different cuts you could buy a leather piece as. And I originally always thought that it just came down to the size of it, right? So like if you got a full hide, you've got this big old piece of leather to use. If you wanted to do like a couch or something, you know, whatever you need a lot of leather for. And though that is true, these all come in various sizes, there's other things that it means as well. For example, it turns out the belly is actually really stretchy. Not only is it stretchy, but the thicknesses tend to be a little bit uneven. That makes the belly fine for like, you know, small items, keychains, things like that that don't need a lot of structure to them. But not for something like armor, things that need to hold shape, things like belts. Belts, because the belly is more flexible, you're gonna keep running into the issue where like your holes are changing or the belt is stretching out over time, right? For things that need a lot more structure like a belt or armor or whatever, you're gonna want the bend in the butt portion of it. Or for a mix of flexibility and sturdiness, you could use the shoulder portion of it too. Though again, the size of the cuts do play a part as well, because no two pieces of leather are going to be the same. So if I was making a piece of like, let's say armor, and I wanted it all to be uniformly colored, I'd kind of really want all of the leather to come from the same animal. Since it is an organic piece, it's gonna take dyes differently, and the natural coloration is gonna be a little bit different. So if you want everything to be really uniform, you wanna try to get as much from the single piece of leather as possible. And thus you get something like a full hide or a side, because there's more leather to work with for your project. On the alternative, if you just need something small and something that doesn't require a lot, you can get away with something smaller like a single shoulder or a belly or like a single butt. You know how I feel about your single butt. I'm genuinely sorry about that. I apologize. I don't know what came over me. One last cut to think of, especially if you're just getting started, is actually called remnants. This is just kind of like the extra stuff that's left over from other projects or other larger cuts. So for example, this piece I've been playing with, this is from a project that I had cut up. This would be considered a remnant. A lot of craft stores or leather stores will actually sell little bags of remnants that you can get cheaply. Which is great. Like this thing, I could make coasters out of this, or I could make a bunch of little keychains out of this. Maybe a little like single fold wallet or something. Whole bunch of stuff you can do with remnants. It's super cheap. It's easy to practice with. I would definitely recommend you getting your hands on some remnants if you're brand new to the trade. Honestly, even if you're not brand new to the trade, I could always find uses for little pieces of leather. I love it. Okay, let's see. We've done the tannage. We've done the cuts. I think now we'll go into the finishes of the leather. The leather finish is just kind of how it's treated after it's gone through the tanning process. So for example, just a natural finish is just the leather left as it is, naturally. Looks great, looks just like leather, you just gotta be really careful to take care of it in order to make sure it stays looking good. Remember, it's not treated with anything, it's not protected. On the other side of that is finished leather. Finished leather actually has like a clear coat put on it. More, I believe it was said a transparent dye is put into it. At any rate, the finish makes it so that it can take a lot more wear and tear. It doesn't like degrade as quickly. So embossed leather is kind of cool. It's leather that's had an image or a design stamped into it. And this is sweet, especially if you don't want to go through like tooling all of those designs, right? You can get a piece of leather that already has that vibe that you're looking for and just add it to your project. Now we get into like these two. We've got a suede and a nubuck. Suede, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the way suede is made is that the leather is split so that kind of the finished top side of it is taken off, leaving just all the flesh part. Which, by the way, there's the top, the grain of the leather is the smooth part on the surface. Yeah, this part right here. And then the other side is called the flesh. It's kind of rough and furry down here. Just as an FYI. So yeah, with suede, it's given this kind of a nap finish that looks nice, it feels nice and soft, but because that top bit of the leather has been taken off and that's the most like structurally sound part, it tends to break down a lot more easily. So you'll find suede on things that shouldn't be getting a lot of wear and tear. As opposed to a very similar kind of look and feel, a little bit more stiff, nubuck. With nubuck, that top grain has been brushed to give it that kind of nappy feeling to it. Maintains a bit more structure, it's a little bit more rugged than the suede is, while still having that really nice feel. A lot of like Timberland boots end up being nubuck. And then the one last one I have for you here is actually one of my recent favorites. It looks like it would be like a chrome tan or something, but it's not. It's milled leather. This stuff is what happens when you take a piece of like veg tan leather and you run it through a mill like a tumbler and stuff until all of the fibers break down, making it very kind of fabric-like and loose. Fabric-like. I had trouble saying that. Fabric-like and loose. And the really nice thing about this is not only is it like great for garments or bags or something, but it takes a dye. I can dye this to whatever color I want, which is especially good if I need it to match a project, right? Like I've had ones before where I have a piece of armor that's a certain color and I want this kind of nice flowy piece to be with it, but I want the whole thing to match exactly. I can use the same dye on this stuff and it's totally gonna work. Really like this stuff. I'm a big fan of it. I only discovered it recently and I love it. And that's all the finishes that I'm gonna cover because it's all the finishes I know. If you know more, you know, comment section. You know what to do. Oh no, wait, one more I can think of, and that's hair on leather. It's not necessarily like a treated leather or whatever, but it's leather with the hair still on it. You still have like the pattern of the cow or whatever. And this is great for just kind of that extra pop. If you're looking for something that has that feel and vibe to it, you can get leather that has the fur still on it. I think that's all I got. Yeah, that's all I got now. Now, when you go to buy leather, you have to know the weight of your leather. That's how it's bought. And it's done in ounces. So like this thickness I got here, I believe is about a 6-ounce leather, whereas in this one's about a 9-ounce leather. Basically, it is the actual thickness of the leather itself. And again, that really comes in handy when you're thinking about what you actually need your project to do. So for something like a piece of armor or something that needs to hold up to like a lot of abuse or hold its shape very rigidly, then I'm gonna want something a little bit thicker. As opposed to like when I did the traveling bar over here and I needed to wrap the whole thing in leather, I want something real thin so that wraps really nicely. So for the traveling bar, I used like a 2-ounce leather, whereas for this helmet, I used a 6-ounce, I believe it is. Oh, and just as an FYI, I learned this recently, that every ounce of leather is 4 millimeters worth of thickness. Depending on where you are, I know some places do use, you know, the millimeters for measurements, you can do that. But yeah, in general, when it comes to the thickness of the leather, just look at the thing you're trying to do and match it up with whatever you think would work best. Do you need something really thick and kind of stiff, or do you need something that will be much thinner and more pliable? I will say, if you're just getting started, I'll tell you like the first 10 leather projects on this channel was all done in 6-ounce leather. It's that good middle of the road. It was pliable enough to do what I wanted it to do, but it would get stiff enough to hold its shape. This is 6-ounce leather. If you're making something like armor, it isn't like performing armor, right? You want something 12-ounce or whatever, 9 to 12-ounce to be something that can take a blow and actually work as armor. But for something like LARPing, cosplay, just accessories, the 6 ounce is going to be fine. It's also great for if you want to do book covers or something like that. And it's not that expensive. The higher the weight you go, the more expensive the leather tends to be because there's more leather there to work with. Leather crafting and buying all the tools and stuff, it can be kind of pricey. But what if I was to tell you you can help finance your craft habits by playing games in your phone? Thanks to today's sponsor, Misplay, that's entirely possible. You like that? You like that transition? Smooth. So Misplay is an app I actually discovered fairly recently, and it's so cool. Basically, you play games you like on it, and you actually earn points that you can redeem towards gift cards for playing those games. The more you play, the more points you earn, and the more gift cards you get. It's kind of cool. And it offers a huge assortment of games. Everything from puzzle games to word games, strategy games, adventure games. Pretty much any game you're into, you can find in the app. I'm not gonna lie, before I go to bed, I usually play a solid half hour to an hour worth of games to kind of like unwind. And it's just cool to also like earn gift cards as I go. Again, supporting my crafting habit. It's nice. Definitely check it out. Just go to misplay.com/skilltree or click the link in the description below to download Misplay for free. You'll get 200 bonus points just for signing up today. Plus, if you use my code in the app, you'll get an additional 30 points that you can use to redeem towards your first gift card. Just check out the description below for more details. All right, one more thing you have to think about when you're thinking about the type of leather to use is the type of leather to use. What animal did it come from? Because that is going to have a difference, sometimes a really big difference. For example, cow leather, completely different from like ray skin. And whereas in something like cow leather is versatile and it is strong, you can shape it, you can stamp it. Again, something like ray skin has different uses. It's great for a handle, let's say for a sword, which it had been traditionally used for. Because it has all these little bumps and ridges in it, it gives it good grip. You have things like bison, which is a really kind of hardy leather, very strong, though also kind of very rigid. On the other side of that, you have also very strong but very flexible deer skin. Something like, moccasins or, pants or some kind of garment. Maybe a little like a sack or something. It's great to use deer skin. Heck, you even have something like kangaroo, which is traditionally used in bullwhip because it's very like a springy material. It's lightweight, but has a very condensed grain in it, which makes it have that kind of springiness to it. There are a whole bunch of different varieties. I'm not going to go through them all. You can definitely go look it up, but depending on the project, you might want one of these things. That can come down to the resilience, the general look. If you want a cool scale pattern or something, you might go with a snake skin or maybe a crocodile. Depends on your project, like everything else here. Do you? All right, so you've gone through this list. You know the kind of leather you need or want or whatever for this project. Now what? Where do you get this stuff? So there's a whole bunch of places to get it. If you're really lucky, you have somewhere local to you that deals in leather. Like I have a Tandy's that's next to me. And that's awesome because I can go there, directly touch the stuff. I can have the people who are there help me, which by the way, definitely ask for help. The staff at these places, or if you call them, are always around to help, and I would recommend calling them. So even if you're somewhere where you can't necessarily go to a place, odds are there's somebody you can call and talk to before you order it. Getting into the next portion of it, which is you can order it online. There's Tandy, there's Weaver, there's a whole bunch of different retailers that you can get leather from online. But the problem is you can't actually look at and touch this stuff. So by calling in and saying, hey, this is the project I'm doing. I'm looking for a very specific, I need it to be like, it's for a client, they want a bag, it has to be pristine leather, no marks on it or anything. Then they'll assess what you need and they'll help you. And then I've also read that you can do like shows, right? They'll have leather shows, or if you go to Ren Fair, sometimes you'll have somebody there who's doing tanning, or they're a leather crafter and they sell leather. So that's always an option too, though a lot more hit or miss. You don't know when those things are happening usually, unless you're part of the community already. I've never seen one actually. I mean, at Ren Fairs, yeah, but I've never seen like a leather trade show before. If you run a leather trade show, invite me. I want to go. And that is it. I think I've given you enough here to go off of. This was really actually interesting to me. I learned a lot while researching this episode. But hopefully in the future, when you want to make something yourself, you know kind of which leather you want to use depending on your project. Now, I hope you found this useful. If you did, why don't you give me some of that like and love, and don't forget to subscribe so you know when I release new content. Happy crafting, and in the meantime, keep leveling up, you. You made it to the end screen. YouTube loves it when you do that. It's a fantastic way to support this channel. Another fantastic way to support this channel is by joining these people's noble ranks. These are our Patreon members, and we cannot do this without them. Special thanks to our newest high-tier Patreon members, FK Nelson and Kevin Stent. It means absolutely everything to us that you like what we do here enough to help support us and just keep this whole thing running and growing. If you like what we do here and you want to support us, consider joining our Patreon, link in the description below. Or you can watch one of these here too, and YouTube likes that as well. I usually try to say something funny here, but I'm gonna drink my drink and watch you decide which one you want.